sitting on a beanbag. I love these beanbags, but I don't know. Anyway, let's see how this works. I'm in London, in a different location. And, oops, I'm precariously set myself up here. I hope I won't have any disturbance. Anyway, I hope you all had a Merry Christmas. The last reading of BLISS Afterlife I did was on the 22nd of December. I've had a lovely Christmas. I hope you all had a lovely Christmas. I'm still away from home. But I thought I'd use this opportunity of quietness in the house to read another chapter of a story I started to write in 2006. So it's 15 years old, and what I'm reading here is 15 years old. I was traveling a lot and had time to write, and I just sat occasionally and wrote. This, as I said, is 15 years old. And it goes on, and I'm just reading what I've written then, because it's interesting to me. It might be interesting to people. We're in changing times, and it's quite nice sometimes to just relax and read back what is written, or write, or do whatever distracts from what's going on and helps to lift our spirit. So, chapter 35. This is a story about reincarnation, bliss after life. I like a little bit of sound in the background. I hope you can hear me all right. I haven't tested this, but I just have to trust. Holly. Holly is the daughter of Bliss, who passed away at 95 a while ago. Holly decided to take a walk along the seafront. She had finished her sessions early today. Occasionally she treated herself to free afternoons. As she made her own work schedule, it was easy to allow some me time, as she called it. Her life was generally busy, but since Chris had retired and Tony living away from home for a while, or forever, she thought, she had felt some empty spaces. She was just going through the same things most mothers experience. She felt quite lucky he had been living at home for so long. He was 23 when he left. He had lived a year in Germany and was due back in England soon. He had always loved visiting Hamburg, and when he got older he travelled around in the holidays. His German was very good, and he wanted to become a teacher. This year away was part of his studies. Omi, his grandmother, would have been proud of him, she thought. Her thoughts often strayed to Bliss. It was Mum, really, whose talks about the lovely seaside decided Holly to move here. Luckily, Chris had no problems with it. In fact, he had some family endorse it, and the decision to move here was very easy. They had lived here for 10 years now. Mum only came here after Dad passed away, but she had often talked about living in a place overlooking the sea. Holly loved walking along the seafront. It was quite blustery today, and she wrapped up warm. It was a nice way to think, walking with a view to the sun slowly moving lower in the far horizon. Ben's girlfriend was pregnant. He had written to her last week, probably testing out the reaction before he told his mum. Susan was close to him, and Holly felt often she behaved a little like a mother hen. Ben was worried his mum would not approve of him being so far away and part of a Chinese family and so on. He did not really know why this was so, but Ben knew it was quite a big thing somehow. His mum did rely on him emotionally quite a lot. He knew that, and he usually was happy to indulge her. He needed a bit of a distance from her, and she smiled to think that he had gone a very far way away indeed. He loved her very much, but she could be a little trying sometimes. Always so concerned about his mental well-being and worried about his eating habits and many things she found to worry about. He could even feel her disapproval when she said nothing and tried to appear easygoing. He told Holly today that he found her more relaxed somehow, but that her, being Holly, more relaxed somehow, but then she was not his mum, and that was probably the difference. No wonder Ben and Tony got on so well. They were real cousins in the best sense. Holly was sure they found her and Susan as exasperating as she had found her own parents at times. Both were only children, but being so close made them almost behave like brothers at times. Better, actually, she thought. Funny how life moves along. Now we shall have a Chinese in our family. At least this is how it sounded to Holly. She hoped he would decide in favor of coming over with her soon. He mentioned that he was due to return to his office for a couple of important meetings and that he could take Faye with him. She said that it would be so nice if they could meet his new love. She felt happy for them, and she hoped Susan would too. She had almost mentioned something on the phone today which could have given it all away, and she had slapped her hand over her mouth in the last second. They were usually so close that she almost forgot that it was all still a secret. She looked up. Clouds were gathering in the distance. She watched the dog walkers. She thought again about persuading Chris to get a dog. She had often thought about it, but her life was always too busy, and Chris was not a big animal person. She walked along the front most evenings, and she almost missed having a dog. She was 59, but she never really owned one. Well, this will be my next project, she thought. It could fit into her life easily now. She will discuss it with Susan next week when she goes up to London. She did a twice-monthly session in London, in a London hospital, and obviously stayed with Susan. She hoped Chris would come a little later this time. She felt like having some time alone with her sister. She will have a chat with him tonight. He had talked about seeing Peter, an old friend of his in Clapham, and it would make sense to arrange this for the same time. She felt a little chilly and walked faster to get home. She was going to cook a nice dinner and talk with Chris. He must be back home by now. She saw his car pulling up outside the house and waved to him. He smiled, pleased to see her, and Holly braced herself with pleasure. A little brown Chinese baby. What will Tony say? Chapter 36. Bliss sends Alexei along his way. I was getting involved in departing souls in recent time again. I had never done this before, and I was glad it was Alexei I had to help along. I had known him for some time, and as I was his guide when he had returned from his last incarnation, it was good fortune that I had moved along in my own development and met with him in his state of nothingness. This is the period of time where the soul reincarnates into a new body. This usually happens properly, a little time into the pregnancy, not always at the same time. The spark for connection is done at the time of conception, and Alexei is no longer part of the soul world, but he is also not yet reincarnated. He comes back here often after trying out the new physical body he will inhabit, she will inhabit. This body is now chosen, and it will be hers. But during the pregnancy, and also for a while after birth, she will return here. Her soul will return here when she is resting, her physical body. She will remember for a while. In fact, recently she had been in groups with a council where she learned that many new babies born into the earth now will have a much better memory of their existence than ever before, of what happened before. There is a great excitement here as we are entering a change, a shift in earthly evolution. But she had not really understood it all yet. The resting period for the baby will be as much for her mind as it will be for her body. The body grows. It's a process which requires no influence from the soul, but physical comfort, affects the feeling the soul experiences when it comes back every time to get used to the body. It rests up here and I give it help. The soul of Alexei is looking forward to life in a new existence. The transition is a miraculous time for a mind and body. The body is a new entity and the soul needs to relearn to inhabit it. Birth will be a whole new experience, and it is a big event in the cycle of life. Alexis seems very content. The new body seems peaceful. He feels joy and excitement in the warm environment, and sometimes he's losing his connections with his soul group now. He will soon be all she and start his new life. He is full of good intentions, and I hope his will be a good life. Still a little while to go before she comes to be born. Chapter 37. Holly and Chris. As agreed, Holly took the train to London on Thursday evening. She was going to use Susan's car to get to the clinic on Friday, and they would have plenty of time to talk. Chris was coming up Friday afternoon and would spend the evening with his friend in Clapham, and they could drive back together on Sunday. Holly enjoyed taking the trains occasionally. She loved looking out of the window, not worrying about traffic jams. She would arrive at Waterloo in less than 2 hours, and the refuge was in Wimbledon, a short train journey. She thought of her mum and dad. They often came on the train in the years before Dad passed away and Mum moved closer to her. Dad changed the habit of a lifetime, taking the train so often. He always used to drive everywhere. Both Mum and him had a great life together, she thought again. Somehow, they'd always managed to keep their marriage alive. When they had both retired, they were so lucky that they were so healthy they travelled quite a lot together. They had actually bought the camper van. This had been joked about when Holly and Susan were teenagers, as they could not see their parents actually doing it. But they did it when Mum was in her 60s. They bought a relatively comfortable home on wheels and travelled around England and even Europe a couple of times, stopping and enjoying some time at one place and taking off again a few days later. Initially only for the odd weekends, and later, after both had retired, they went away for longer periods in the summer. They always came back with stories to tell. Both parents liked to talk and always met new people on their travels. Before she knew it, she had arrived in Wimbledon. The change of trains was quick, and she decided to walk to her sister's. That would do her good to stretch her legs. She walked briskly through the town centre to her sister's house, which was close to the refuge. She would not stay in the big house tonight. Both Susan and her had decided to have a quiet evening, and this was only possible at Susan's own place. Before long, she had got to the small terraced house belonging to her sister. It was an old Victorian cottage-type house, two up, two down, as they say. Holly let herself in with her key, and she could hear Susan in the kitchen singing along to Ella Fitzgerald. She slowly crept along the hall and jumped through the door, letting out a loud boo, which caused the spoon her sister had just filled to taste the soup fly high into the air, ending up splashing Susan on her fringe. Gotcha! Holly could hardly speak for laughing, which Susan eventually joined in after she had shaken her fist into Holly's face. They had played this game ever since they were young. Their mum was the worst for it, knocking on the front window when both were sitting watching telly with her back to her, just to laugh uproariously when they jumped out of their skins. In fact, even their grandmother used to do it. Do you remember when Omi jumped? Sorry, that made me laugh. When Omi jumped when you talked to her behind her back. Yes, the fag she just put into her mouth got stuck on her lower lip. She had thrown her arms up in surprise. That made them both laugh out louder. The tomato soup dropped on Susan's jumper. Now look what you made me do. She poured her sister a glass of wine and they sat down at the table. I made some tomato soup and I got some nice bread and salad to go with it. Excellent, said Holly. Her sister was a really good cook. They were both quite good at creating nice meals and enjoyed eating them. So, what's new? Asked Holly. Susan looked at her questioningly. What should be new? I just thought you had something to tell me when you asked me if we could have some time together. In fact, I felt the same. We had not had a good old chinwag for ages, so I suppose we don't need a particular reason. I'm going to be a grandmother, Susan said. She smiled broadly and hugged herself. She pulled her handkerchief out of her pocket and blew her nose loudly. Holly jumped up and embraced her. Lucky you. How? I'm sure it must be Faye. Who else? But when? How does Ben feel about it? How do you feel? Susan sat down again. She was glad to talk about it to Holly. She had been thinking about the news for days now, and she started to feel really excited about the prospect of having a grandchild. That was going to be a partly Chinese grandchild, and she loved it, and it hadn't made any difference. In fact, she was looking forward to getting to know her son's girlfriend. Ben phoned me this morning. They're both coming to visit in 3 weeks' time. I'm so happy that we can all meet her. I can't wait what she looks like, and I really miss Ben. How lovely and how exciting. Holly got up to get some plates and cutlery. She took her glass and relifted it. Let's drink to a good time, a happy pregnancy, and a lovely new baby on the way. Susan chinked her glass and they both drank deeply, wishing things will be as toasted. So this is the end of chapter 37, and I am reading chapter 38 soon, which is entitled Fenian Faye, or Faye the Becoming Mother.